All right, we are into Unit 7, Lesson 2. There are no new lesson notes today. We are going to access the lesson notes from Lesson 1, so you might want to have those handy. But anyway, let's go right into the examples for Lesson 2. A study of 1,000 people aged 20 to 30 is being commissioned to help show the effect of how much a TV a person watches each night has on their energy levels. Match each function with the type of study, either a survey, an observational study, and an experimental study. So this goes back to what we talked about yesterday, the three types of statistical studies. So there are three different options here. So one of them will be a survey, one of them will be an observational study, and one of them will be an experimental study. So let's take a look at A. The 1,000 people fill out a questionnaire asking them how much TV they're watching at night and their energy levels. So they're simply filling out a questionnaire that the researchers are giving them. That is a classic example of a survey. So A is a survey. B, the 1,000 people are randomly divided up into two groups of 500 people each. One group will watch TV every night, and the other group will do something else. Before going to bed, their energy levels will be measured by a researcher. So we know it's either got to be an observational study or an experimental study. So let's go back on our notes from yesterday. Notice an observational study. Remember, an observational study, the researchers are collecting data without actually influencing the participants. In other words, they're just purely observing them. They're not actually imposing any treatment on them. In this particular case, they actually are imposing treatment because they're actually measuring the energy levels of each of the participants. So, in other words, they're collecting data by directly influencing something. In this case, the energy levels. So, number 2 is going to be an experimental study. Number 2 will be an experimental study. Or B will be an experimental study, excuse me. C, the 1,000 people will have a camera installed in their living room. The researchers will simply keep track of the number of hours of TV each person watches and watch their level and what their energy levels are. So they will observe them via the camera. They will not actually measure. They will not actually impose any treatment on them. They won't influence them in any way. They will simply observe them. So C is an observational study. Okay. So that is those are the answers to number 1. A is a survey. B is an experimental study. C is an observational study. Number 2, which option should the researchers use and explain why? So notice again, what are they wishing to study? They're studying the effect of how much TV a person watches on their energy levels. So they're basically looking at the effect of one thing on another thing. If we go back to our lesson notes and we look at the experimental study, okay, collects data by directly influencing something to determine how another thing is changed. So they're collecting data by in this case, they would be collecting data by influencing which activity they do, whether it's watching TV or something else. And they're seeing how the effect of one thing has on another thing. So, which option should the researchers use? Okay. Because you're studying the effect of one thing on another thing, we should use an experimental study. So let me write that out. So because the researchers are studying the effects of one thing and that one thing would be watching TV. So because the researchers are studying the effects of one thing, watching TV, on another thing, energy levels, they should conduct an experimental study. Okay. They should conduct an experimental study. Okay. So whenever you are studying the effect of one thing on another thing, you should conduct an experimental study. And that is it for lesson 2.